Your line is now muted.
So now we're recording. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming again. We're going to talk about opening the pool. I'm also going to go through, after we go through actually opening the pool, we're going to go through some water balance and why that's important. And then I'll go through the maintenance side of things, so what you would need to do to keep the water looking great all the time and on a weekly basis. So we'll start off with the opening of the pool, and we're going to talk tonight specifically about above grounds. And our goal is to make your above ground look like that. Well, the water anyway. You may not have that exact backyard, but our objective throughout the year is always to make sure that you enjoy your pool. And we've had the slogan for a couple of years now. We don't ever want you to miss a moment. And that's the idea. We want your water to look amazing all the time. And when we go through the chemistry side of things, and actually when we're opening the pool too, there's a lot of things we need to ensure that are working properly in order to get this great looking pool. And the more we do ahead of time, and when we're opening the pool, the less you'll have to do when you're wanting to use the pool. So we'll start off with actually opening the pool. So let's go through. We're going to talk about when we should open. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Then we'll talk about how long it should take. Actually, I'll talk about that now. So if you get, at the end of this, you look at this and say, Mike, this looks like a lot of work, and you'd like R&R to come out and open your pool, feel free to contact them, and they'll set up a time to come out and open your pool. And, it'd take them probably a couple hours, depending on the size of your pool and depending on the cover you have. If you plan to do it, which the reason you're on this webinar is most likely why you're wanting to open up yourself, I would set aside the better part of a day, maybe half a day, but a good chunk of the day. And if you have access to some extra hands, that would be amazing. I know in this time of what we're going through, it's a little tougher to get extra people to help because you can't call all your friends in to help. But if you have some extra people in the household that can help, that'd be awesome. And the tools that you need, well, that's what I'm going to go through. So some of you may look like this right now. You have your tarp style cover. Others, you might have a leaf cover, or there's what we call the ultimate or eliminator covers, which have a mesh through the center. These covers, so essentially, I mentioned the question is when do I open the pool? Well, really, as soon as the water is thawed. So as soon as the ice is off the cover and the ice is out of the pool, let's get it open. The longer you wait, the further you go into the season without opening. Say, despite, I don't know if you had snow down there today, but we had quite a bit of snow. It didn't stay on the ground, but it was snowing this afternoon. So, but we still kind of have an early spring. Things have thawed fairly quickly here. So I'm recommending to open as soon as possible within the next week or two, if you can. And I'm sure everybody has lots of time on their hands. But you want to get the pool open early because the earlier you get it, the less issues you're going to have. If you wait until mid-May to open your pool, most likely you'll open to a green pool, and that's what we don't want to do because it can take quite a while to get that pool clear after you've opened it. And that's, the longer it's cloudy, the less time you're going to be able to spend in it. So especially when you start getting to the part of the season when you can use it, when it's warm enough. So open up as soon as possible, and it's not really going to cost you a lot to run a pool when the water's cold either. So this time of year, you're not going to use a lot of chemical to use it. With these types of covers, like a leaf cover or your ultimate or eliminator cover, they let water through, so you do need to open as soon as possible because letting water through, you're letting other contaminants through into the water, and it will start to get green very quickly. Okay, so before we do anything with an above-ground pool, we need to reinstall the equipment. So before you take the cover off, before you do anything, we need to reinstall the equipment. So first off, you're going to, if you brought your pump inside, bring it out, and we're going to reconnect it. And you're going to reconnect your hose from the pump to the filter. Now, if you left it outside, that's great. That's how I did it with mine. I just left it there, and they're designed to be out in the elements, so it's okay if you left it outside. If it has been disconnected, reconnect it. Some of you may have unions here that they're quick connects. You may want to double check and make sure that the O-ring in there is okay. So you undo it, and then there's an O-ring in there, and then you want to lubricate it. And there's a product that it's either Jax or Magic Lube that you use to lubricate the O-rings. Do not use Vaseline. And I'll talk quite a bit about lubricating O-rings. We have quite a few. We need to make sure they're lubricated, and that it helps to seal everything up so you don't have air leaks and you don't have any water leaks. So make sure you check that. So reconnect that. Then you're going to reconnect the hose from your skimmer to the front of the pump. And I know it's tough to see at this angle, but we would have left this open, and most likely what I recommend is leaving the hose connected, but just laying away from the pool. So we're going to reconnect to the front of the pump. And you may have a union, or you may have a PVC piping that you need to reconnect with a clamp. If you have a union, then you just reconnect that and make sure the O-ring, you may have your ball valve. This is a ball valve right here, or shut-off valve. It may be on the front of your pump, and there'll be a union and a lock ring there too. And an O-ring inside, so you'll want to lubricate that. But reconnect that. If you do have to put some PVC piping onto an adapter, I would recommend getting some hot water or a hair dryer or a heat gun just to give it a little warm up before you put it on. It makes it a lot easier to get the PVC onto the adapter. Otherwise, you'll be fighting with it to get it on and it won't go. But just a little heat up on that, it'll help get it on there. And then reconnect, make sure this is reconnected here, and keep this valve open, or open up the valve that's in front of the pump. Then you're going to do the same thing with the return line. And the return line is going to reconnect to the head of the filter. And the head of the filter, it'll tell you where. There's a spot, and hopefully you remember from last year, but it says return on the actual head of the filter right beside where the hosing part comes out. So reconnect that. If it's a union, just make sure, again, you lubricate the O-ring, make sure it's in good condition, and reconnect it on there. The backwash hose, you can reconnect that at any time when you go to backwash. And I'll talk about the other components of the filter a little bit later in my seminar. But we do need to just make sure that these are all reconnected before we start taking the cover off and getting it going. So the next thing is, once you've reconnected all your equipment, we're going to start filling the pool. So actually put a hose under the cover and start filling the pool. Now, for the Eliminator or Ultimate covers, if you have one of those covers, you can start taking that cover off right away. It's a pretty easy cover to take off because it's just it's sitting on the top of the pool, and you can just undo it and take it off. The tarp style covers are a little more difficult because there's water on top, and we need to try and drain that water off or suction that water off. And the best way to do that is with a submersible pump. And the submersible pump, I recommend, if you're using one, to use like a milk crate or something to put it in when you're putting it into the onto the cover. Most submersibles, they suction from the bottom of the submersible, and what can happen is it can actually stick to the tarp or the cover, and it'll eventually start pulling water through the cover. And I've had that happen many times, and then you start draining your pool. So be careful with that, and that's why the melt crate is something we recommend putting it into so you don't get that happening. While that's going on, while you start draining the pool, and I apologize, I have some in-ground photos here. I don't have this in an above ground scooping up leaves, but if you have any leaves on top of the cover, try and scoop them up as much as you can. Because those leaves are very heavy, and it'll be very difficult to get the cover off if you don't take those leaves off. So scoop as many leaves as possible. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start removing components, or actually I'll go back up with the tarp style cover. There's a cable going around here, and there's a little winch that, so you need to find where the winch is, and you're going to undo that and then loosen the cable. Try not to loosen it too quickly so that the cover doesn't fall into the water. What you want to do is kind of go to one side and start peeling it back. And you'll see here, like with our in-ground pool, it's the same way. We're going to start peeling the cover back and bring it to one end if you can, because that way we can avoid the top water going into the pool. That top water is not very good for the pool. It's actually it's a lot of mess, and it's very acidic. So if we can avoid it, let's try not to put that top water in. If you can't, then we can clean it up. Not a problem, but the more we can avoid that, that'd be great. So you're going to peel back the cover, and as you're peeling the cover back, continue draining, continue scooping the leaves as much as possible, and then eventually you'll just take the cover right off. Now, in some cases, you may not have even covered your pool with dirt above ground, and that's fine. So really all you're going to do is start filling the pool up. There are leaf vacuums that you can get, and the folks at R&R have that. And if you need one, talk to them. You may already have one. They're great for leaves. I use it in the fall especially. But now if you have a lot of stuff that falls in the pool when you're doing the cover, this will actually, you can hook it up to your garden hose and it vacuums up all your leaves rather than using your regular vacuum. Okay, so the cover's off. And once the cover's off, it's a very good idea to clean it, whether you have any type. The only one that's a little tougher to clean would be the leaf net. But the tarp cover and the ultimate or eliminator covers, you want to clean them because they have a lot of grime and dirt on there, so clean that off. And then also it helps protect and preserve it. So Stowaway is the product we recommend using. It's a great product. It cleans it and it also protects the cover. You're going to put half of it in a pail of water. So take half the bottle, pour it into a pail of water, a 4-liter pail, and then pour it onto the cover. Pick a good spot in the lawn if you have it. And then give the cover a bit of a scrub with your scrub brush from your pool. It works perfect. And then once you've scrubbed it, rinse it with your garden hose. I don't recommend using a pressure sprayer because it can actually damage if you're not careful with it. So a garden hose to spray it off. And then what you're going to do is take the rest of the bottle full strength and pour it onto the cover. I recommend doing it while the cover is still laid out, and then swish it around. And then roll it up and then put it into like a big Rubbermaid garbage pail if you have one handy. It's actually good to keep it wet over the summer, and if you can close it up and put it off to the side. This keeps the cover, it resists mildew, so you don't get mildew. It helps keep critters out like mice and other critters that could burrow into the cover, and they don't like the taste or smell of the Stowaway. And it also helps preserve the cover. The cover will actually last longer with the product because it keeps it supple and keeps it clean. So Stowaway is a great product for that. Next, if you do notice some spots on the liner when you're bringing the water level up, and this is a great product you can use to kind of break that down if there's any spots. Normally they're like grease and oil spots just from the water itself and sitting stagnant. This is a great product called Off the Wall that you can use to remove that, and you're just going to put it onto a rag or like a sponge. You can get a spray nozzle for it. We used to sell this in a spray nozzle format, but with regulations on packaging, we couldn't anymore. So you can get a spray nozzle. Most regular spray nozzles will fit this, and you can spray it on and just leave it there for a sec and then wipe it off. It is acidic, so you may want to use gloves when you're doing this so you don't hurt your hands at all, but it does remove the any buildup. Okay, so now I'm going to get into, we've got the cover off, and now we're going to get the components, your filter and your pump and everything up and running properly. And what I'm going to talk about is the circulation and then the filtration. If you look at a pool, there's 3 components, as you can see there, that make this pool. If they're working properly, you have a great looking pool. So we're going to talk next about circulation, making sure we get the right circulation, and then talk about filtration. Then I'm going to spend the rest of the seminar on the chemistry side of things to make sure everything looks great. So we'll start off with circulation. Circulation, you may not have this exact pool, but this gives you kind of an example of what a pool looks like. And what I want to show you is how we have the circulation set up. Now, you are going to suction from either the skimmer. You may have a main drain. Most above grounds don't, and that's okay. You're going to suction from your skimmer, and you're going to go around through the pump, through the filter. If you have a heater or a chlorinator, it's going to go through there and then back to the pool. Now, this is an in-ground pool, and we have it set up so that we have 2 jets. And what we want, no matter what pool we have, round, oval, rectangular, we want the water going in a circular motion. So in an above-ground pool, your skimmer's here, and your jet, your return, is going to be just right here, just past the skimmer. And you want to point the jet away from the skimmer as much as possible. it means that that'll push the water in a circular motion and bring it back to the skimmer. In an above ground pool, in your lounge chair, you should be going around all the time. And that's really important because it brings all the water to the skimmer, okay? If you have it coming straight out or away from or towards the skimmer, you're not going to get the same type of action. So make sure it's away from the skimmer. And we also want the jet to be pointed on a downward angle, about 45 degrees. This is important because, first off, we want to circulate the bottom. We don't want to just circulate the top of the water. We want to make sure we're circulating the bottom. It also, if you have a heater, heat rises, so we want to make sure we are heating the bottom of the pool. And lastly, all the debris that goes in the top of the water, if you have the jets pointed up, a lot of that debris will end up falling to the bottom of the pool, and you have to vacuum more often. If you point them down, what that'll do is bring all that water around and into the skimmer, and that's what we want. We want to bring those bugs and leaves into the skimmer so they get caught by the skimmer basket, so you don't have to vacuum as often. Okay. I get this question all the time: how long should I run my pump? What's the best time to do it? Ideally, as it says up there, 24/7 is what we want. It's the best way to run your pool. And I'll show you here. There's a graph here that talks about filtration and turnovers. And one turnover, it takes about 6 hours. And a turnover means that we filter, all the water in the pool gets turned over once. So if we turn the pool over once, and that takes 6 hours, we're only filtering about 42% of the pool. And that's not even half of the pool being filtered. So we want, and this is continuous turnover, by the way, it's continuous pump time, not 2 hours here, 2 hours there. It's 6 hours straight. If we go to 2 turnovers, so 12 hours, we get 84% of the pool filtered. That's a lot better. We're getting the majority, 3/4 of the pool is being filtered through, and we're keeping the water clear and clean. As you move up to 3 turnovers, we get to 95, and then 4 turnovers, which would be 24 hours, you're getting 98% of the pool is being filtered, and that's the ideal turnover and filtration. So that's why we recommend running it 24 hours a day, and only turning it off when you need to, turn the dial or you're vacuuming, things like that. But it's really at the end of the season, the money you will save by turning it off, it really isn't a lot compared to if you have it turned off and all of a sudden we get a bout of algae, you'll eat up that and then some, that savings. And also, if you do decide you want to turn off the pump, I recommend only at night. During the day is when you want the pump running because that's when we get chlorine going into the water to make sure it's safe. And during the day is when you have the majority of the use in the sun. And so we want to protect you and your pool. You need to have the pool running during the day. Okay. All right. Another part of the circulation system is our skimmer, and I talked a little bit about that. Now, you probably don't have this style. You're going to have this skimmer right here, which has one hole in it. So you're only going to have this hole right here, which goes to the pump. We would have left that open over the winter, so you don't need to do anything with that. Just reconnect your hosing. But inside the skimmer, there's a basket, and this basket's really important because it is what stops the large debris going into the pump. We want to try and keep as much of the large debris out of the pump as possible. So make sure you have a basket for your skimmer. Make sure it's in good condition. The lid tells us everything about your skimmer, so if you don't have one or it's broken, cracked, get the numbers off the lid, and you can talk to R&R, and they can get you a new basket. I'm not sure if they have them on their online store, but something you probably have to talk to them to find out which one you need. The other thing, too, is this weir door or floating weir, very important part of your skimmer. It's what draws the surface water into the skimmer. So that flapping action actually draws the water from 6 to 8 feet in the pool, the surface water. If you don't have that in there, then you're only drawing from about 6 to 8 inches in front of the skimmer. So all the debris out here in the middle, it'll just swirl around and then end up falling to the bottom of the pool. So what that door does is brings that debris in so we don't have to vacuum as often, and brings all that debris in to help get it cleaned out. So very important part. Again, if you don't have one, talk to R&R and they will get you one for sure. In the spring, this is definitely a product that I recommend, especially if you have a lot of trees around and you get a lot of pollen. I know where I am, I get a ton of pollen, and one of the things I found with my pool was that it would start making my pool look bad. It would actually make it get into the water and start making it look kind of greenish. So that's not good. So I use these skimmer screens or socks, and they go over top of the basket. There's 5 in a package, and they last about a week. So you get about 5 weeks out of these, and it catches fine debris like pollen. Pollen is very, very fine and will go right through the filter. It is so fine it's very difficult to catch, and it ends up going back into the pool. So if we can catch it as it's going into the filter before that, then that's better. The skimmer screens or socks. Now, one thing I will recommend is checking it daily when you have them on, because they can get clogged up pretty quickly in the spring. And if you clog it up, and I speak from experience, it can actually suction down onto the basket. And I actually busted my basket because it actually broke the basket. It suctioned down too hard. So check it. If it is full, take it out, give it a rinse, and then put it back on again. And again, they will last about a week. And there's also a special solution in them. They're designed to work in a chlorine environment, so don't use nylons or anything because they'll just disintegrate. And they also can absorb oil and grease as well. It's a product called MySelex that's on the socks that catch oil and grease. So do that once a week, and again, keep a lot of the debris out of the pool. And make sure you're checking your basket often. This was one I ran into that there's no circulation going through there. So it's very difficult to keep your pool clean if, the skimmer basket's off. And when you do clog up your skimmer like this, your pump will run dry, and that's when you can damage your pump. So make sure you're checking your basket regularly. So on above ground pool, we left, now some of you may have plugged off your return line, but most of you would have left it open. So not any water would just go out the return line. But if you did plug it, you're going to remove your plug. And this here, if you use the yellow plug, this tool, it's a little blue tool, will remove that plug for you. It makes it easier. Then you're going to put the eyeball back in, your return fitting. So most of you will have a collar and a lock ring, and then your eyeball. And I like to make sure that they come apart so that you can move the eyeball. If it's all one piece and you can't undo it, try and get it undone. But make sure to put some Teflon tape on the collar and on the other threading to get them back in. That way it comes out a little easier that way. You can also use the O-ring lubricant on there too, and it just makes it so you can get them out. Plastics tend to stick together and it makes it hard to get them apart. And you also want to make sure that this eyeball is movable so that you can get it positioned the right way. If it's stuck and you can't move it, then you won't be able to get your water directed the right way. So make sure you do that. Okay. Water is circulating. You have your pump running. Now you can, once the water is ready to go, you can get your ladders in. So one thing about ladders is you wouldn't need to put them in until you're ready to go and swim when the water is warm enough. But check everything over before you put them in. Check the bottoms of the ladders. Check for any cracks, for any sharp edges. The liner is quite vulnerable, and we don't want to tear the liner at all. We don't want to put any holes in it because that's when you start leaking. We can fix the liner, but it's not something we want to have happen. And for walk-in stairs or steps, you're going to get in to put them in. You can't just drop them. They're called drop-in steps, but you can't just drop them in. You do need to put them into the water because most of them you have to weigh them down. So, and you can talk to R&R about easier ways to do that if you'd like, if you're not too sure or familiar with that. The level of the water is very important in the pool. We want to make sure you have the right amount of water, and this is something you need to keep an eye on. There is on the skimmer plate or the face plate, most now have like a halfway up, there's a fill line. That's kind of the minimum. So halfway up the skimmer is the minimum amount of water that you should have in the pool. My recommendation is there's 2 screws, And the top screw on the side, that's where we would like the water. It's about 2/3 the way up the skimmer. That lets the weir door bob up and down properly. If you're halfway or below halfway, what will happen a lot of times, especially in above ground pools, is it will bring that door down and stay down. It won't, you won't get that flapping action. So having it 2/3 the way up gives a nice flapping action on that weir door, so we can draw that surface water in. The other thing too is if you are noticing more than usual water loss, then check with R&R to make sure that you're not losing water due to a leak or something. You know, there are some hot days that we're going to get, hopefully this summer, quite a few, I hope, that you will lose to evaporation. And, you know, but if you're losing more than an inch in a night, that's a lot of water. So check with R&R, and they can walk you through if there's any issues, and maybe walk you through some steps on checking to see if you do have a leak. I'm going to talk about a product at the end of the seminar that will also help prevent with evaporation, and also keep the water a little bit warmer for you too. So just make sure you have the right level of water. And next we'll talk about the pump itself. So the pump's set up and ready to go. Now, a couple of things about the pump. First off, if you did bring it in, you may have put either water or antifreeze. Hopefully you used antifreeze. And non-toxic antifreeze, like from us, not Prestone or anything. But drain it out. You can dump it out if you carried it out, or you can just drain it out with the plugs. So you can undo the plugs and drain it out. There'll be 2 plugs on your pump, one for the strainer basket or pot, and the one for the impeller. But if you do let this go back to the pool, do not worry. It's non-toxic. The worst case you could have, the worst case scenario would you get a little bit of foam in the pool. That's it. But it won't hurt the pool at all. The reason we had antifreeze in there is there's a seal in behind the impeller that we needed to keep wet. If you didn't put any antifreeze or water in the pump, what could happen is the impeller might have seized up on you. So when you go to turn the pump on, nothing's working. You hear a hum, but nothing's working. That means that the seal in behind there is seized up. And that's where you'd either have to bring in the pump to get it serviced, or you may end up getting a new pump. So depending on, talk to R&R if you have this issue, but that's usually what ends up happening. The basket, this is really important part of the pump. Make sure you have it. Make sure it's not cracked. Now, sometimes you need to actually give it a bit of a squeeze. Like, don't squeeze too hard to break it, but you may want to give it a bit of a squeeze to make sure there's no cracks. Sometimes you don't notice cracks, but when it goes into the pump, it'll open up the crack and let stuff through. This is the last line of defense before the impeller. We don't want big chunks of stuff going into the impeller, so this basket prevents that. So make sure you have one. Make sure it's in good condition. You can talk to R&R if you don't, and just let us know. There's a plate, a nameplate on the pump if you need one, and it tells us everything about your pump. Just take a picture of it, send it to the folks at R&R, and they'll get you a basket. The lid, obviously make sure it's in good condition. There's a big O-ring there, and this is the O-ring that you really want to make sure it's lubricated, because that's what seals up the pump. You want to put a good thick bead of it, and if you're putting it on and your finger is getting black while you're doing it, it probably means that you need to get a new O-ring. It's on last legs. But make sure you put a good thick bead on it, because that's what seals it up. When the pump is running properly and sealed up properly, you should see nothing happening in here. It actually should look like it's not working, unless you see bugs floating around or swirling around at the bottom. If you see bubbles in here or you see movement of water, that means you're probably not sealed up properly in the lid, and that's where that O-ring lubricant helps. Not over-tightening it, it doesn't help. Usually you need to put that lubricant on there to make sure it seals up. And then, because otherwise, if you have a lot of action in there, you're going to get a lot of spurting out the jet. And if you're getting that, that's why. You've got a seal leak somewhere. If it's not in the lid, it could be in the O-rings, the unions before. If you're getting air going into the system, most cases it's around the pump or before the pump that you're getting an air suction, an air leak somewhere that's causing air to go through the system. Okay, next is filters. Now, I would say if not 100% of you have a sand filter, 99% of you have a sand filter. And this is what a sand filter looks like. Without, you wouldn't see the inside. But this is a cartridge filter. There may be one or two of you that are here that has a cartridge filter. And then this is DE or diatomaceous earth. And the differences are mainly, as you go to each one, it gets a little better quality filtration, a little finer filtration. The one that we're going to talk mostly about is the sand filter. So the sand filter is basically a couple of things about the sand filter. We've already connected your hoses. So you've got your return line going into this one here in particular. The pump comes into here, and then your return line goes out. And that goes back to the pool. Your backwash hose on the other side. And again, I mentioned you can connect that anytime you go to backwash. There are a few components we took off of the filter last year. So the first one is your cap or plug for the bottom of the filter. So at the bottom of the filter, there's actually a spot where we took a cap off or a plug and we left it off. That was because that's where it drains all the water out, but then we also leave it off so that it just dries out the sand. We leave it off for during the winter, just that it stays dry so we don't have any moisture in there. So make sure you have it. Make sure that you replace it so that we don't have all the water gushing out. So it's at the bottom of the filter, actually right. You'll notice it on this one here, it's right here, or you may need to reach down and feel around to see where it is. If you don't have one, again, the filter has a nameplate on there. Hopefully it hasn't faded away, that you can take a picture of the filter and send it to R&R and they can get you one. The pressure gauge, before the pressure gauge, you may have a sight glass, looks like a little jar, and there'll be a spot on the head of the filter that you reconnect to the head of the filter. If not, I think, no, this picture doesn't have it. But you're going to reconnect that. And then your pressure gauge. And the pressure gauge, that, first of all, if you left it out last year, you're probably going to need a new one. They don't last very long in the winter. They don't winter well. So you may end up, if it doesn't read 0, then you probably need a new one as well. But essentially, make sure it's working properly. It's a really important part of your filter. And you need to put it, when you put it in, you're going to put some Teflon tape on it. And it's very important that you do not overturn this guy. It is tapered metal going into plastic. And if you overturn it, turn it too tight, you'll crack the head of the filter. And you cannot repair the head of the filter. There's too much pressure in there. And you're looking at a very high cost to replace the head of the filter, even if you can. Sometimes you end up having to get a new filter if you crack the head of the filter, depending on how old your filter is. So make sure you don't overturn it. What I recommend doing is if you turn it and it's not facing up and you know you can't go any further, then back it out, re-Teflon tape it, put it back in. It doesn't need to be perfectly snug. It can have a little bit of movement as long as you don't have any leaks coming out and it's facing up. So just, get it in there fairly snug and hopefully have it facing up. That's the ideal. The sand, now I'm going to ask Kara if you can come on for a sec. Are you promoting sand or glass?
We're using glass. We've been using glass for about 4 years now.
Okay, just wanted to double check that. So,
yeah, of course.
Glass is a different type. So a lot of filters use silica sand, which is a sandblasting sand, heavy coarse sand. And a lot of companies have gone to a glass. It's like a recycled glass that provides a little longer usage and a little better filtration. So your glass or sand, depending on how old your filter is going to sit about 2/3 the way up inside the filter. It is something that we should check every once in a while. It doesn't have to be every year. Before you start looking though inside your filter, talk to R&R first, because you do need to, you remove the top of the filter, the head. Most of them have a C-clamp or some of them it's a thread down, but you have to be very careful when you take it off because there's a pipe here that it sticks into and you can't disturb that pipe because otherwise you'll break stuff inside. So make sure if you are checking the sand level or checking the sand to do it very carefully or maybe touch base with R&R beforehand. But I'm going to do a quick run through on how a filter works. So the filter, on the filter position, it's going to come from the pump. It's going to go down through the sand or glass, through the fingers or what we call laterals at the bottom, up the pipe and back to the pool. And that's normal filtration. 95% of the time, that's where it's going to be on the filter position. There's a few other positions. There's recirculate or whirlpool. That's the same thing. Some filters say whirlpool, some say recirculate. And that just bypasses the filter and goes back to the pool. Not often that we use this. There's one product that we have that we recommend using it, but otherwise it's not a function you're going to use or a setting you're going to use often. There is the waste or drain position, which when you put it to waste or drain, it's going to bypass the filter and go out the waste line. That's when we're draining the pool in the fall, but also sometimes there's some stubborn debris like pollen sitting on the bottom. We'll recommend a vacuum to waste. So you hook up your vacuum, put it to waste, and it just gets rid of it right away. There is the closed position, and that is when you go to clean your basket in your pump. You put the filter to close, turn off your pump, turn off the valve in front of your pump to stop the skimmer from gushing out at you, and this stops any water flow from coming out when you take the lid off of the pump to go in and clean the basket. Otherwise, if you leave it on filter, you'll get water coming back down from the filter gushing out at you. And then there is backwash and rinse. Those are two positions. Backwashing is different than filtration. It's opposite, actually. It's going to come from the pump, go down through the pipe here, up through these fingers, laterals, and billows up the sand or glass and releases the debris that we've caught. And then it goes out the waistline. And a couple questions always come up from this, and I know my veterans that are on the line, I'm sure you guys remember how long and when. But essentially, when should you backwash? The pressure gauge is key with this. So that's why I was saying you need to make sure your pressure gauge works properly, because the pressure gauge, you're going to, with an above ground pool, you're going to wait about, you're going to let the pressure rise above normal from about 5 to 7 pounds. Now, your normal will depend on your pool. So depend on your filter, depend on how old your sand is. It may be anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds. Mine always was around 12. So I wouldn't backwash until I started hitting around that 17, 18 pounds of pressure. I found I could make it to about 18, 19 pounds before I'd have to backwash. What ends up happening is it gets to a point where it blinds off the circulation. So another way to tell you need to backwash, if you can't feel anything coming out of your return line, your pump needs, or your filter needs to be backwashed. But it's really important that we let that pressure build up, because that actually tightens up the media. So it tightens up the sand and the glass, so it filters better. So the finer stuff, it'll catch finer stuff as it gets dirty. But it does get to a point where we lose our circulation. So the dirtier it gets, the better it filters, but then we no longer circulating the pool. So you need to backwash. So wait for about that 5 pounds above, and then you're going to backwash for a minimum of 3 minutes. This is really important, because if you backwash less than that, you're only getting the stuff that you see coming out of the top. And that's where I find a lot of people that use the sight glass to backwash, it'll go clear in about a minute. And that's the stuff you see going out. But the stuff down here, you're not getting out of the filter. So you want to make sure that you do get that 3 minute. You can go up to 5 minutes. You can go longer than that. But 3 minutes is the minimum, and that gets everything out. And your water will look amazing. And if you backwash this way, you'll probably backwash once a month, if that. I know I used to backwash probably 3 times a year. You don't need to vacuum or backwash every time you vacuum. You also don't need to do it once a week. Just when the pressure goes up, and if it's not up, then don't backwash, because then the water looks great. Don't worry about backwashing. If you do need to drain water out because we've had a lot of rain, then I would use the waste or drain position. Don't get rid of any of that pressure you've built up unless you need to. Okay. After you backwash, put it to rinse. The rinse cycle for about 30 seconds, and what that does is puts all the sand back into place. We've billowed up all the sand at the top of the filter. If you go from filter to backwash, you'll get a puff of dirt back into the pool. So this will prevent that from happening. So put it to rinse for 30 seconds, and that'll push all the sand back into place. And then put it back to filter, and you're off to the races. Also, make sure, I'm not sure who here is brand new to pools, but make sure when you're turning this dial to turn the pump off every time you turn it. Do not turn the dial with the pump running. You can break stuff inside, okay? Next is the cleaning the filter. Did someone have a comment or question?
I was just going to comment, it's always important to make sure that anytime you touch the handle on the filter, that you compress it all the way down. So you're bringing the handle all the way down as far as possible before ever moving it, just because there is a spider gasket in there. So all the way down and then move, with the pump off, of course.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So cleaning the filter is cleaning the sand or the glass in the filter. And we recommend cleaning the filter once a year. And I recommend doing it in the fall. If you didn't do it in the fall and, it's not a brand new pool, like if you just put the pool in last fall and didn't do it, that's fine. Probably wasn't enough dirt to worry about. But we recommend doing it in the fall. That way you don't have to worry about, it breaks down any oils and greases and any calcium deposits. Now, if you haven't and you need to do it or you think you should do it, you can do it now as well in the spring and then do it again in the fall. And what we're doing is breaking down oil and grease and any calcium deposits. And this allows us to keep that media lasting longer. It is not an easy job to change sand or glass in a filter. It's actually a very difficult job. It takes a few hours, and it's a lot of scooping of sand and glass. So it's not a fun job. You don't want to have to do it. And if you clean your filter once a year, you should get anywhere from 5, 6, 7 years out of your filter sand or filter media. If not, then you're every couple of years changing it, and it is, like I mentioned. Now, R&R, they can do it no problem. They'll come out and change the sand for you if you need to do it. But our first line of defense a lot of times is just to clean it and see how that goes. Cleaning it, I'm going to go do a quick run through here on how to do cleaning, but R&R will walk you through this as well when you go to do it. You can give them a call or they can talk to you about it. But essentially, you're going to take a product. It's called Filter Bright. And Filter Bright is a mixture of acids and chlorines and things like that to help break down all this stuff. And you're going to mix it in a pail of water. 4 liters is perfect. A 4-liter pail or a gallon pail. You probably have some Balance Back 100 pails kicking around. You may want to get, especially this time of year, so you can use the pool water, but you may want to get some warmer water from the tap. It'll dissolve a lot nicer. And you're going to mix it up. And then you're going to go over to your pump, shut off your pump. Then you're going to, at the beginning, before the pump, make sure you shut off the valve in front of your pump. So to stop the skimmer from flowing into the pump. If you don't have a shut-off valve from your skimmer to your pump, I recommend getting one. This would be a great time to put one on if you don't. Or you can plug off your skimmer. So use a rag or something to plug off the skimmer hole inside the skimmer. Just make sure to take that out when you go to turn your pump back on the next day. So close off your skimmer. Then you're going to take the lid off of the pump. Now, another thing, too, to mention, don't move the filter. Leave it on the filter position. Leave the dial on the filter position. Then you're going to turn the pump on with the lid off, pour the solution in. Once the solution is gone, turn the pump off and put the lid back on the pump. Leave it for the night. It's not going to go back to the pool. Don't worry. It's going to go sit in the filter and do its job overnight. The next day, and this is what's really important, make sure to backwash. So you can do it any time during the day. I know we've got lots of time on our hands, so you don't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, though. You can go up to 24 hours. And you make sure to put it to backwash. So as soon as you get out there, put the filter to backwash, and then open up your valves from the skimmer, and then turn on the pump. And you may want to go to a 5-minute backwash. You may want to top the pool up a bit. You will be amazed at some of the black gunk that comes out of there. But that's a good thing. It's a good thing getting that out of there. So make sure to backwash and then rinse and then start the pool, put it to filter again, and then start up fresh. And your water will look great all summer. For anybody with a cartridge filter, I'll do a quick run through here. You're just going to mix Filter Bright in a big pail. You can put your cartridges in, and you're going to soak them. Filter Bright will do up to 20 liters or work in 20 liters of water, which should do most of the filters here. If you need more than that, then you need to go to 2 bags. And then you soak them overnight, take them out, rinse them. If you can let them dry, that'd be great, but if not, don't worry about it. You can put them back in and get started again. Same with DE. Diatomaceous earth, you're going to remove the grids, you're going to put them in, soak them, take them out, rinse them off, and then continue on. Another great product to use, especially with cartridge filters or the DE filters, and you can use it with sand and glass, but is a Natural Result, which is a pool enzyme cleaner. And enzyme cleaners, what they do is they break down oils and grease. So the biggest contaminant in a filter is oil and grease. This will help control that, break it down for you. So if anybody has a chlorinator, a lot of you put your sticks or your pucks in a skimmer, I'm sure. But if you do have a chlorinator, you're going to reconnect it and make sure if you have unions to put O-rings in the unions. There's a big O-ring on the top here that you're going to want to lubricate. And it's a special O-ring, so it helps to get that lid off and also makes it last longer too by lubricating it properly. If anybody here is on salt chlorine generation, you're going to reconnect it, and then you're going to plug in the system. Now, one thing about these systems, though, is they don't produce chlorine until the temperature of the pool is above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're using a salt chlorine generator, you won't be getting any chlorine until the temperatures are higher. Now, if you heat your pool, that's great. But if you're opening your pool now, you'll need to get some supplemental chlorine, like some sticks or some granular chlorine to supplement that. And we also carry a line of salt products that like our Scale Defender, pH Reducer, Stabilizer, Cell Cleaner. Scale Defender is a great product for saltwater pool that you should use on a monthly basis, and because that protects the cell. And then you should clean your cell from time to time, once a year minimum, and you may end up doing one partway through the season because scale does get built up inside the cell, and that's what prevents it from producing chlorine. Okay, so the pool is running. The pump filter are circulating properly. We've cleaned the filter, or you cleaned it last fall. You've got the jets all hooked up and running the right way. Your pump is running. Now we're going to put in our opening chemicals. And the opening kit is, along with our pool opening complete, those are kind of our 1, 2, 3 punch to get your pool up and running quickly and looking great. So the opening kit comes with PowerChlor, which is a 1 kilogram that you put through the skimmer. And it goes slowly through the skimmer, and it's a heavy-duty chlorine that's going and kill anything in there, bacteria-wise. And then we're going to have a liter Vanish that you're going to pour in that's going to kill on the end any algae that's there now present, and also start building up a bank to help protect you from any algae in the future. In the kit, once you get it, there's also a coupon, just FYI, there's a $20 off our Smart Pack coupon in this kit. So don't throw away the box. There's instructions there, but plus a coupon. So you can get some discount off our Smart Pack, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And with the opening kit, you have your pool opening complete. So you're killing all the bacteria and algae that's built up with our opening kit, and then this is going to clean things up. It's has clarifiers, has some water line removers, and some other things to remove contaminants, phosphate removers and contaminant removers. And most of you would just need to use one bottle. It does up to 75,000 liters. And that's going to get things running and looking great to start off. Now, it still may take a little bit of time if you did have any algae in there to get crystal clear, but this will be a quick process. Okay, so next we're going to talk about getting into the chemistry side of things, so the water balance. So water balance, right now, as you're opening your pool, we do need to make sure you get a checkup into R&R, and we need to make sure, first of all, that the pool has been running for at least 24 hours. Now, if you're putting in your opening kit along with the pool opening complete right away when you open your pool, then we're going to ask you to wait 2, maybe 3 days before you take a water sample. because the high levels of chlorine will mess with our reading. So you do want to make sure. But if you're going to open it and then get a test done, then please wait for at least 12 hours. We need that top water, that water that we've added into the pool or rainwater to mix through. So right now, it's not the easiest thing to get a water checkup. So maybe, I don't know, Kara, if you want to talk about the procedure you have in place right now.
Well, right now, basically, we're doing more of we just take the sample outside and pour it into a beaker and bring it inside. But we're still finessing the easiest way to set this up so people can move along very quickly. So I expect to see a video that goes with that probably in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so just keep in touch with, as you open your pools, as to the best way to get a water sample to R&R, and they'll walk you through what you need to do. And then once a month, you want to bring in a checkup, and because in a month's time you can have enough change in the water that you'll need to maybe do some minor adjustments to it. The reason we balance water is water wants a certain amount of mineral, and if we don't give it to it, it's going to try and get it. It's going to take it out of our pool. It's also going to wreak havoc with our chemicals, and it's going to make the water uncomfortable. We want to balance the water to make sure that we're protecting you and your pool and the chemicals you're using, so you're not wasting money either. I'm going to talk about a few of them tonight, but you don't need to remember these. We'll walk you through this. The only one you really need to keep an eye on is pH. pH is the most important one. It's the one that has the biggest effect on the pool and you. We keep it in this range right here, 7.4 to 7.6. As you can see, it's neutral, and we keep it actually in between there. The main reason we keep it in that range, for the most part, is for swimmer comfort. The number, basically our eyes have a pH of 7.5. So we want to make sure everybody's comfortable. Keeping it in that range is key to making sure when you're swimming, you don't get irritated eyes. If your eyes are irritated from the water, it's pH that's bothering your eyes, not chlorine. Okay, so we want to keep that in range for that. And that's something we'll have you test with the test strips, and we'll also test for you when you bring a sample in. Also, your sanitizer efficiency, so your chlorine. I'm sure most of you are using chlorine. pH has a big effect on chlorine. So the higher the pH goes, the less chlorine can do its job. So as pH moves up above 8.0, it actually drops chlorine's efficiency down to about 20%. So you're actually not getting good chlorine, and that's when you end up getting algae and stuff. So pH has a big effect on how your chlorine is going to work. So make sure you keep it in range for that. And then lastly is your equipment life. And I have a couple samples here. Anything metal in the pool. This is a heat exchanger from a gas heater. And I've seen these get eaten through in about a month. Low pH can eat through copper very quickly. And the bad thing, I guess, about very acidic water is it looks amazing. It's probably the clearest looking water you've ever seen, but it's not good for the pool. It can actually damage anything metal in the pool. And then on the right here, you see a liner, and this is an older liner, but it's a good example of what can happen with a very acidic water. I've seen many new pools where they closed up and they didn't adjust their pH or balance their pH and alkalinity before they closed. The water was very acidic, and it grew all these little shapes, and they opened up in the spring, and they had all these little, I like to call them worm tracks, because they kind of look like little worms down underneath the liner. That's called liner absorption, and it actually grows the liner into these shapes, and they don't come out. So you have to actually replace the liner in order to get rid of them. And so they're very unsightly. You don't want to have that happen. So balancing is key to making sure we protect your equipment, because they're quite costly to replace. Next is your alkalinity and calcium hardness. So this here, you don't really have to worry too much about it, because we'll help you take care as long as you get a sample into us throughout the season. Alkalinity is what protects the pH or buffers, or like a shock absorber for the pH. So it's very important, because the pH is very important. I just talked about how the pH can affect you in the pool. Alkalinity is what affects the pH. So if it's out of range, if it's quite low, which typically city water or town water is low in alkalinity. Also rain water is very low, so it'll drive the alkalinity down. If it's too low, your pH will bounce around. And it's like driving down a road on a really bumpy road with no shocks, you're going to bounce around. Where with your alkalinity in range, it's like having nice shocks, so you're just basically staying very stable. And that's what will happen with the pH, is if your alkalinity is in range, then your pH won't move around. And so if you have a lot of rain or you have a lot of usage, you're not going to see the pH bottom out or change on you. So that's really important. Bounce Back 100 is the product we use to raise alkalinity, and you're probably very familiar with that. In the spring, you'll have a big adjustment in the spring, and then some minor or maybe no adjustments throughout the season. Calcium hardness, this one here is more of a longer term, and it's about protecting your pool, protecting your investment. Very soft water. We like to bathe in usually city water, and we put softeners on our wells to protect our equipment and stuff with soft water. But for a pool, it's actually very hard on it because water wants calcium. And if it can't get it if it doesn't have it, it's going to try and get it from your pool. So it's going to try and take it out of the liner, the plastics under the ground, PVC, your pump, your filter. And what ends up happening is those things start to become very brittle, and lines under the ground can crack. I see it more often with liners where they start to get very brittle and they'll snap and break. I actually pulled a liner one time, I was taking a liner out, and the liner was breaking like glass. It was just snapping and breaking, and I was dust panning pieces of it. And vinyl shouldn't be like that. It should be very pliable, and that's because they hadn't adjusted calcium. The other side, hard water, we get scale. Now, we can't lower calcium, but we can protect. So if you already have high levels of calcium in your water, then we're going to give you products like our scale inhibitor to help protect your pool. So it's really important that we get it checked, and we'll monitor where your levels are and make recommendations. The last one I'm going to talk about is stabilizer, and this is once-a-year application. Stabilizer is what protects your chlorine. It's like sunscreen for chlorine. And essentially, we do this at the beginning of the year, and you may not need any, depending on how much you had last year or how much turnover of water. It stays in the pool. So the only reason you need to add more is if you have a big change in water. Your Smart Sticks also have stabilizer in them too to help replenish as you backwash and splash out and stuff. So throughout the season, your stabilizer level should stay fairly stable. But the first test, you may need to put some stabilizer in. But that's what keeps chlorine in the pool and saves you money, because sun eats up chlorine very fast if you don't have stabilizer in the water. But we'll tell you exactly what you need. So there's a few ways to get tests. You can test the 4-way. It's actually a 5-way test kit now, or test strip. It tests pH, your chlorine or bromine, alkalinity, and calcium. So that sounds like 4, but it's chlorine and free available chlorine and bromine. So that's the 5. But you can, but still, they're more of a gauge, especially the calcium and alkalinity. They're more of a gauge to say, okay, I'm looking a little high or low. I need to get a sample into R&R so I can make adjustments. And then we'll run it through our Smart Lab and give you a sheet from our ALEX program. And again, keep in touch with R&R as to what the best way is to get a sample into to them to get it tested. Okay, now we're going to get into our maintenance system. So we've made sure the circulation is working properly. We've got the jets pointed the right way. We've got our filter all ready to go. It's clean, good. Then we've balanced the water, and now we're going to do our weekly maintenance. And our weekly maintenance consists of making sure of 3 steps. So step 1 is making sure the water's safe. Step 2 is making sure the water looks good, sparkling. And step 3 is by keeping algae at bay. And we have all those 3 components in our Smart Pack. A lot of you probably already use this. So step 1 is making sure the water's safe. And to make sure the water's safe, we need to keep a sanitizer, your chlorine or your bromine, always in there at 1 to 3 parts per million for chlorine and 2 to 4 parts per million for bromine. The majority of you are on chlorine, and the only way you can check is by testing. So you should test regularly to make sure you're maintaining that 1 to 3 parts per million, and that's with, we recommend using Smart Sticks. They are by far the best chlorine stick out there in the market. They last about a week, so they actually work like a chlorinator, but in your skimmer. A lot of you are using your skimmer to put them in. You can use them in your chlorinator, but if you are using the chlorinator, you want to make sure that you have to fill it up a little bit more and crank your chlorinator up. to make sure you get enough output. But they last twice as long as regular pucks. So you actually, one of these pails will usually last about 2 pails of regular pucks in the market. We've also got some technologies in here. You'll notice they're blue when you take them out, and they're actually not sticks anymore, they're bricks. And they have Silk Guard in them, so they have corrosion and scale prevention and a little bit of water softener in there. So they don't actually look like this anymore. They're blue, but they're in a brick formation. And essentially, they're going to last over a week. So you put in a week's worth at once. So you, depending on the size of your pool, general rule of thumb is about 20 to 30,000 liters per stick. So in the spring and fall, you'll probably get away with 30,000 liters per stick. So if you have a 60,000 liter pool, you'd use 2, 80,000, 90,000 you could maybe get away with 2 to 3, and they'd last the whole week. And as the water gets warmer, then you're going to need to add more. And they, like you see, you last a week. Now a puck, it's like a big Smartie, and you can't put a week's worth in at once because you'll have a lot of chlorine, and then they'll be gone in 3 days. So make sure, that's why the Smart Stick works so well and lasts so much longer than the other types, because the Smart Guard that we have in there. And they also work on heat and flow. So as the water gets warmer, it's going to use more chlorine, which you need, because as the water gets hotter, you need more chlorine. When you go from 80 to 85 degrees in your pool, your chlorine consumption goes up 50%. So you actually use 50% more chlorine. You're going to go through 1.5 sticks more, or another half a stick more than you normally would. And they stop dissolving when you shut the pump down. So if you do shut the pump down for any reason, if you do shut it down at night, it stops dissolving, whereas regular pucks don't. They continue dissolving, and then you get high levels of chlorine in the skimmer, and you get potentially, if you have bleaching around the skimmer where the liner is, or you may see bleaching around the return jet. So they are by far the safest product to use in the skimmer. So that's step one. And essentially step one is your Smart Sticks, and they go in the skimmer or in your chlorinator, and it takes maybe 2 minutes to put them in. With the new lids we have with the pails, they're really easy to get into now. And you put, depending on the size of your pool, you're going to put 1, 2, or 3 sticks in at a time. And that's keeping your water safe. Step two is making sure the water looks good, sparkling, getting rid of what we call swimmer wastes. Well, what is a swimmer waste? Well, swimmer wastes are kind of what it sounds like, stuff that comes from us. Perspiration, suntan lotions, hairsprays, deodorants. One last one you hope nobody does in your pool, but it does happen, especially if you let the dog in the pool, or babies, and some small children maybe. Animals, actually a dog, its first reaction to do in the pool is to release his bladder. So urine is a big one, and of course nobody ever pees in your pool, but it does happen. And what happens is all these things, all these wastes that we put in the water, has nitrogen, and nitrogen bonds to chlorine and becomes a chloramine. And a chloramine is a bad chlorine. It does nothing. It just makes the water start to look milky, it starts to feel bad, irritate, and it starts to smell. And smell bad, if you smell chlorine, your pool needs chlorine because you're smelling these bad guys. A lot of times you go to hotels and you can smell their pool. Well, that pool needs chlorine. It needs to be shocked because you're smelling these chloramines. This chlorine, HOCl, which is free available chlorine that kills, it won't smell like that. So you want to make sure you shock regularly, and shocking regularly means shocking once a week, or after a heavy use, or if we have a big thunderstorm. Thunderstorms with lightning, lots of nitrogen in the air, that'll cause an issue in the pool, so you should shock after a thunderstorm. But you're going to use Smart Shock, and Smart Shock's really easy to use. You just take 1 or 2 bags, depending on the size of your pool, and you're going to cut open the bag and pour it into the water. I usually just pour it right in front of the jet, and it just goes away, goes out into the pool. And what's nice is you can swim in 15 minutes after this product. You can do it during the day. You don't have to do it at night. And I recommend actually doing it in the morning. That way you're not doing it just before you close the pool. And if you're putting a blanket on especially, the process of this oxidation does take a few hours. Even though you can swim, it's fine. But if you were to put it in at night and then put your blanket on, then you would negate the effect that you're doing of the oxidation. So make sure you do it at some point in the day, and again, once a week you're going to do this. It takes like 2 minutes to do. And that comes in the 15-minute work week. Sorry, your Smart Pack. We used to call it the 15-minute work week for those of you that have been around for a while. The last step is your algae, and we want to keep algae at bay. And technically, you can't have an algae-free pool. If you have 30 million cells or spores per 1 ounce of water, that's when you see algae. That's a lot. So if you see algae, there's a big problem, and it'll double every 20 minutes. So our goal is to never see it. And if you do use an algicide on a weekly basis, and Banish is the best for this, use a very small amount depending on the size of your pool. And we'll tell you exactly on our Alex printout how much you need once a week. And you can add all 3 products in at the same time, and it will prevent all types of algae. So you're going to add your initial dosage when you use your opening kit, and then depending on the size of your pool, you're going to probably use 100, 150 milliliters. And our goal is for you to never see a pool looking like this. Now, that's a really bad one. Or like this. That is also a very bad looking pool. We don't want to see green. Green's expensive. Green is time because you won't be able to swim. And it'll take a pool like this about 2 to 3 weeks before we can get it clear in a lot of cases. So following the 3-step system, and also I recommend brushing the pool. So brushing the walls, and no more than 10 minutes. So concentrate on dead areas like underneath the jet, in around steps, behind ladders. That will get any of those dead areas that the circulation just doesn't quite get to. And that'll prevent any growth or buildup from whether it be algae or another thing is pink slime is another one. That helps prevent that. And you do that once a week, takes less than 15 minutes. That's why we used to call it the 15-minute work week, because the 3 components, your Smart Stick, Smart Shock, and Banish, take about 5 minutes to put in the pool, and then you brush your pool for about 10 minutes, and your water will look amazing. That's the 3-step. And then I have a 4th step, and we have a couple of options here, and some of them you can use both of, but we have our enhancers. So some of you are very familiar with our Optimizer Plus. We also have a product called Pool Complete, which we've had for a few years, and we have a new product called Pool Perfect Max with Phos-Free. And they each do a little bit different things. Now, Pool Complete, some of you maybe used Pool Complete in the past, and it is a great product to make the water look amazing. It has great clarifiers, water line removers, and some phosphate removers to make the water look amazing. Use 1 to 2 caps a week, and a gallon will last you about a season. Then we have our Pool Perfect Max. This is the new one this year. We actually own Natural Chemistry now, and it is one of the products that we brought out with our Natural Chemistry brand. And it is a little bit different. It's similar to Pool Complete. So you either use Pool Complete or Pool Perfect Max with Phos-Free. That's a mouthful. And I recommend the difference between the two is that it has great clarifiers, so you're going to see amazing looking water. But it also has enzymes to break down oils and grease, whereas Pool Complete has more of surfactants to kind of keep the water line down. If you were on a cartridge or a DE filter, I would recommend definitely using the Pool Perfect Max. But anybody can use it. It's a great product. Same thing, you're going to use 1 to 2 caps a week, and a gallon should last you about a season. And the last one I'm going to talk about, and you can use this one in conjunction with the Pool Complete or the Pool Perfect Max, is Optimizer Plus. Ever since I've been with the company, I've been doing this 20 years. This is one of the best products you can put in a pool because it makes your pool feel like silk. It really makes your pool feel amazing. And it also makes other things work better too. But you do it once a year, you'll have an initial dosage, and then all you do is top up every year. So depending on the size of your pool, depending on how much you need, and it makes the water feel silky soft. You don't feel like you got to get out and have a shower because you're all itchy. Women with long hair, a lot of times they don't want to put their hair in the water because they can't brush it afterwards. They have to go have a shower. But this here, your hair, you get out of the pool and your hair feels like it's been conditioned. So it is an amazing product. Talk to the folks here at R&R, and they can walk you through what it is to get, if you're not already using this product, to try it. So that is our system. Making sure you have amazing looking water, we have to make sure, first of all, that your filtration circulation are working properly. Make sure the jets are pointed the right way. Have your filtration, make sure it's in good condition, make sure it's been cleaned. Then get a sample into us. Get it checked out, and then we need to make adjustments to your water balance. Then our 3-step system, making sure you sanitize with your Smart Sticks, make sure you oxidize with your Smart Shock weekly, and a little bit of algicide to prevent algae from growing. And then you may want to try one of our enhancers. So if you have Optimizer Plus and then you're using Pool Perfect Max, so Optimizer Plus goes in the beginning of the spring, and then once a week with your other 3 steps, you would add the Pool Perfect Max depending on the size of your pool. One last product, and I know it seems like a lot of product I'm talking about. You don't, like as Kara mentioned at the beginning, you don't need to use all of this stuff. It's just what's best for you. I talked a little bit about when we were talking about the water level and evaporation. Smart Shield is basically like a liquid solar blanket. It prevents evaporation and in turn keeps the water warmer. You use it once a month, and you use about a quarter of the bottle, depending on the size of your pool. One bottle should last you a good chunk of the season, because you're only using about a quarter of a bottle once a month. And it reforms after you've used the pool. So if you're splashing around, it's going to reform. You won't see it. It won't affect you. It won't harm anything, and it does help keeping it. Even if you have a solar blanket, it's not a bad idea to use this product because it actually will help the days that you have the cover off to keep heat in the pool. And that's basically it for me. I hope I've given you guys, hopefully you're not sleeping. And also I hope that I've shown you how to get a great looking pool and get your pool opened. As I mentioned in the beginning, and I talked about R&R, they are the experts in your area. They're going to walk you through step by step what you need to do. You can call them anytime. You can chat with them online. And they have some specials as well. So hopefully not everybody's leaving yet because there's a special for attending. You will be able to, if you go into their online store and spend $150, we're going to give you clarifying tabs for free. So R&R is going to give you a clarifying tabs for free. So all you need to do is add clarifying tabs to your cart, and then put in seminar in the, when you go to checkout. There's a spot here, have a coupon, click here to enter the code, put in seminar, and you'll get the clarifying tabs at no charge. So that's a nice gift that that R&R is giving to you. Also, when you are putting in orders online, there are a couple of options. You can have free shipping, and then you can also have curbside pickup. I don't know, is there a minimum for free shipping, Kara?
Sorry, yes, there is. It's $100.
It's $100? Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it said that there. Maybe it did. There we go. So, and you can go into the online store, and it's fairly simple. I went through myself, and it's fairly simple to navigate, and you can pick and choose what products you want. And if you have any questions, there's a chat function, or you can give them a call. There are so basically there are some directions, and R&R will tell, like if you're planning to do a pickup, R&R can walk you through how to do that, and they can send this to you as well to do curbside pickup or delivery. So they also have delivery procedures as well. Just in these crazy times we're living in, we have to make sure we're covering all the bases. But I don't know if you want to add any more. I'm going to sign off and let Kara take over and make any additions that she'd like. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate this. This is definitely an interesting way of doing this, isn't it? Hopefully this seminar was really helpful for everybody to have a chance to kind of dig in a little deeper on how you can open your own pool. And, of course, it's always great to have a nice refresher on pool maintenance as well. Like Mike was saying, crazy times, unprecedented times, uncertain times. But we have put a lot of different things put into place so we can keep business as close to usual as possible. Really, I haven't really seen any messages come through, but if you have anything tomorrow, feel free to give us a call or reach out via chat. We also have a chat bot right on our website as well now, too, that we'd be able to go over any specific questions that might be really specific to your pool, or, you know, if you're going along and opening the pool at any point and you have a little question, feel free to let us know. I do know that we'll be sending up a follow-up email to everyone, just giving them a list of, we have a lot of do-it-yourself blogs as well. So we'll send over all those tips and tricks to everyone by email over the next couple days. Again, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. I appreciate everyone taking the time out this evening. If you have any questions on procedures or what we're doing to keep everyone safe, also feel free to reach out. We're pretty open on all that kind of stuff. So thanks again, Mike. I appreciate this. We're hoping to set up actually a bit of a series on this. So if you have any suggestions on different things that you might want to see from a webinar standpoint, as Mike is so good at it, just let us know. Any feedback is good feedback, right? So
exactly.
Thanks again, everybody. And if you have any questions, we'll stay right on here for the next couple minutes. We'll answer any questions. Otherwise, we certainly are available tomorrow as well. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care.
Awesome.